That's good. I like audience participation. That's good. Okay. My name is Jocelyn Mayberry, and I would like to introduce you all to our second annual Soul Food Dinner, BSA Soul Food Dinner, hosted by Student Life. Okay. So this is our second time having our Soul Food Dinner, and it's just our way of, giving back to the community. All walks of life are allowed to come, and it's just basically a time for us to come together, collaborate over some food. It's always fun, right? So today, before we get to the food, we're going to have our special guest speaker. He's an author, blogger. He's an author, a blogger on Huffington Post, and a professor here at Nova. He writes about overcoming challenges, depression and suicide, inspirational quotes, workplace bullying, ethics, and more. He teaches marketing, business communication, intro to business, and organizational behavior, and more. He has experience over 10 years at 5 companies in various consulting engagements. He also has founded 2 companies, a non-educational organization, saving our communities at risk through educational service, also known as Socrates, and a for-profit business called Beyond SPRH, consulting business organization. Later this year, also our guest speaker plans to launch his new radio show. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Sly Young.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody is having a good evening so far. It's a little cold outside, so I appreciate you coming in. And hopefully we'll warm things up a little bit tonight with our presentation. So tonight what we're going to talk about is leadership, leaders, and our responsibilities to continue the journey toward equality. So I always like to start off with a little bit of an overview to sort of tell you where we're going to go, so you'll have an idea of what we're going to do. So this discussion will focus on leadership. What is it? Notable black leaders, leadership considerations, relationship types, the importance of mentors, your responsibility to push forward, and then I'm going to leave you with some parting thoughts once we get towards the end. So what is it that I expect from all of you? So I want you to participate and engage. So if you have questions as I go through this session, feel free to ask me a question. I'll respond to it immediately so you won't interrupt my flow. I also want you to identify some takeaways from this session, because if you're going to spend your time here, hopefully you're going to find 1, 2, or more takeaways that you can take with you after this session. But I also want us to support each other's learning, but I always like folks to be excited to learn and also to have fun. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun as we go through the session today. So one of the things that I always like to do is to provide a little bit of information about my background. How many of you have ever gone to a talk and you have a speaker speaking and you don't really know a lot about their background before they start? Might it be important to understand what the speaker's background is? Yeah, because it affects the perspective and the information that might be provided. So I am a former at-risk student. In 10th grade, I was directed to leave high school because I had failed 6 out of 7 classes. The only option that they told me or gave to me was to leave. They didn't say, how can I help you? What can we do to make this better for you? The only thing they said was to leave. Well, fortunately, my mother was in the room, and my mother looked at me and she said, Stacy, it's your life. It's your choice. You make a decision right now. And that moment was the moment that changed my life before I even knew that it could possibly change my life, because I had to make a choice and a decision, and I had to be accountable and responsible for my actions for the first time. So just because somebody tells you that you're incapable of doing something or that you don't have potential, we don't listen to any of those things, because we know what's within us, so we listen to ourselves. I'm a graduate of the American and the George Washington Universities. I have a BSBA in marketing, of international business, concentrating in marketing, and I have 2 master's degrees. I have a master's degree in finance and investment, and I also have a master's degree in project management. I have over 10 years of experience working in a lot of different Fortune 500 companies. I've done a little bit of everything from billing to customer support to network security to information technology to business development and a lot of other things in between. One of the things that each of you should be comfortable with doing is learning as much as you possibly can, because being able to have a great breadth of knowledge is very, very important. It's great to have a specialty, but understand all the things around you as well. The other thing is, I dreamt of being a writer. I thought about it for a long time, but until some life circumstances happened, I never thought about actually writing. And since the time that this life circumstance happened, and it was something that was very bad for me personally, I could have made a decision to, sit down, go crawl in a corner and do some bad things, maybe drink or drugs or whatever else. But what I did was I turned inside and said, how do I figure out how to get past these moments? So over the last 2.5 years, I've written about 13 different publications, and I've become a blogger on the Huffington Post. So I always like to have interactive sessions. So what is leadership? Who can tell me what leadership is? Anything you make it. That's pretty broad. Yeah. Anybody else have a thought about leadership?
Set an example.
Set an example. Yeah. The way I like to define leadership is an ability to develop, communicate, and execute a vision. So you first have to be able to develop what your vision is, because if you don't know what your vision is, how can you move forward? And more importantly, how can you communicate it to someone else if you don't know what it is? So it starts with developing a vision. Communicate it, and then if we go through the process of developing a vision and communicating it, and we don't execute it, what's the point? So we want to make sure that we do all of those things. But we also, if we have an ability to develop, communicate, and execute a vision, but we also want to inspire others to action, including ourselves. How many of you believe that leadership starts with you? Well, if you're not raising your hand, you should. You probably should be raising both hands, right? Leadership starts with you. Because it's very difficult to lead anybody else if you can't lead yourself. And I don't know if you've ever had any managers that didn't have leadership skills or might have needed to develop some better leadership skills. It can be a very painful experience. So leadership affects all of us. All right, so who are some historical leaders within the black community?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King. All right, I'm going to give you some candy for that answer. Here you go.
Obama.
Obama, that's an easy one, right? All right, there we go. Hey, not a bad throw.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. All right, who else got something for me? I got lots of candy here. We're gonna do a few more. I see a bit over here. Who? Hey, okay. Ready? Oh, you gotta be able to catch though. What do you have over here? Madam C.J. Walker. Oh, good catch. We'll do like two. All right, we'll take these 2 hands here. What else? Oh, we got 4 hands, so I got time. Oh, we got 6 hands. Might as well grab the bag. All right, who do you got?
E.D. Nixon.
Okay. Who do you have?
The name of Perpetuity.
Okay.
Yes, you know her. Yes. No one knows her.
Adam Johnson.
All right. Oh, you got a catch. I'm sorry, Harriet Tubman. Hey. Barbara Jordan. Langston Hughes. All right, one more hand. I'm sorry? Nelson Mandela. Now you're going to really try my pitching arm. Ready? Whoa! All right, not so bad. All right, come on. I see you. Who do you have? Who? Okay, there we go. All right, so that's good. All right. I guess I should have had a different profession. My throws weren't that bad, huh? All right. So some of the typical black leaders that are identified: Harriet Tubman, who was a slave that escaped and then went back and helped a lot of others to escape as well. Malcolm X, some folks consider him to be very controversial, but what I like to say is he was an outspoken advocate for civil rights. Martin Luther King is the most famous that we hear about all the time, who pursued a lot of nonviolent approaches to achieving civil rights. And then Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat to a white man on the bus. And that started one of the most famous civil rights protests in Montgomery, with the Montgomery bus. Okay? All right, some other notable black leaders that you should be aware of. How many of you have ever heard of Dorothy Heights? Yeah. She recently died within the last year, I believe it is. And so she led the Council for Negro, the National Council for Negro Women, easy for me to say, for about 40 years. and she was also a civil rights and a women's rights activist. What about Charles Hamilton Houston? Yeah. Now, he's somebody that's very important to know because he masterminded the legal challenge against separate but equal. So that's somebody that you should know, in addition to Martin Luther King. And in addition to that, you should be very familiar with Thurgood Marshall, beyond knowing that there's an airport named after him in BWI, right? And we should know that he actually successfully defended and won. He won this case. That changed everything for all of us. So it's important to know who these folks are, but he also became the first black Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So it's very important to know. All right, so a lot of you have covered some of these names that are up here. Who knows who Mom Bet is? And that actually probably deserves two.
My knowledge of her is a bit shaky, but I know she was a slave who she negotiated her freedom and then moved to Massachusetts.
She was the first black to sue for her freedom and won. That's two. Oh, so you missed the other, you gotta put both hands out. I said that was worth two. Who else do I? What about Ruby Bridges? Okay.
Wasn't she like the first African American student at like an all-white school as a
Very much so. Oh, you almost got it. All right, who else do I want to pick up, if anybody here? How about Fred Shuttlesworth? Think Alabama. What happened in Alabama?
Was there a movie named based off him?
I'm not sure, there might have been, but there were bombings. There were a lot of bombings that happened in Alabama. All right, so, oh, and the other one, I just want to make sure that I get this right. Dred Scott. He's someone who actually sued for his freedom as well, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court before it was overturned. All right, so good. So we should know who some of these folks are. And there's some other names, and obviously, there's a lot more names that you should be aware of as well. So I also want to mention some emerging black leaders, and some might find the first person that's up here a little controversial, but I think we need to include all folks. If we're talking about civil rights, we need to include everybody. So Janet Mock, who's a LGBT activist. We have Brittany Packnett, that came out of the protests in Ferguson and became a political leader and advocate. And then also Phil Agnew, who's fought for civil rights for many, many years. So I want to stop for a moment and let's look at leadership, because we know about Malcolm X, we know about Martin Luther King, but they had very different styles, but they were both working towards the same thing, right? Civil rights. And both of them had a different approach. Malcolm X was a little bit more active in his approach. Martin Luther King was a little bit more passive. But when we develop a leadership style, we need to understand our environment. Why might environment be important? Why might environment be important in determining your leadership style? I'm sorry? It drives you, but what else? Did you have something, sir?
Your environment might inspire you to be around the type of culture. It might influence your self-awareness.
Yeah, definitely.
Your presence of being.
Yeah, your self-awareness and your presence of being. But also, yes, ma'am.
Helps you determine your approach.
Exactly. Because is every style of leadership appropriate for every environment? No. So you have to look at your environment and determine what's best for your particular environment. Great. All right, so question. What type of leadership is preferred, active or passive?
Active.
How many people say active? Because I heard quite a few. How many say passive? Didn't we talk about Martin Luther King just a moment ago? What type of leadership do you think he might have had? Passive resistance. So it depends, because both approaches can be effective, but you just need to figure out what works best in your particular environment. So it depends on the individuals, the environment, the goals, the objectives, and the desired outcomes. So let's talk about what leadership isn't. So a lot of times we talk about what leadership is. Let's talk about what leadership isn't. So leaders don't wait for things to happen, right? Leaders get things done. They initiate action because they know what it is that they need to do. Leaders identify issues without helping with, leaders don't wait for things to happen. Leaders identify issues without helping with solution. Actually, I have to back up, sorry. Leadership is not this. So leaders don't wait for things to happen. Leaders identify issues without getting involved with them at all. Leaders don't think all the answers are already known, because it's important to make sure that in terms of leadership that we don't know all the answers, because we don't always have all the answers. Leaders don't remain distant from their workers, because being able to accomplish things requires a lot of folks. You need a team in order to be able to accomplish things. And then leaders don't disrespect their workers. How many of you have ever worked for a manager that was abusive? How did you feel about that? Probably not so good. Leaders don't have to disrespect their workers. And leaders also don't ignore the value of the contributions of others. Because there's some managers that take credit for the job that somebody else has done. But leaders don't do that. So let's look what leadership is. So leaders create, communicate, and execute their vision. So we talked about that a little bit earlier. Leaders also set high expectations for everyone. Why might it be important for someone to set high expectations for themselves or for others? Why might that be important? I'm sorry? Accountability. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
So they don't settle.
So they don't settle?
Growth.
And growth?
Growth.
Right, because if someone says, I just want you to be average, what is it more likely that you're going to do? Probably right around average. But if someone says, I have higher expectations of you because I think you can do better, what are you more likely going to do?
Maximize your full potential.
Right, because if somebody believes in you, it can be a powerful motivator for you to move forward. Leaders ensure their teams and their team members have support. Is it important to be able to have support? Yeah. How many of you have a good support system? For those of you that aren't raising your hand, if you don't have a good support system, then maybe it's time for a replacement. And your support system doesn't have to always be your family. Your support system can be your friends. It can be your teachers. It can be anyone that's in your environment that wants you to be better and do better. Leaders inspire others to greater heights, because leadership is about encouraging the masses, the individuals within the collective, to inspire to do more, to be better, to achieve a lot more than it would have been possible alone. And leaders demonstrate visible support. How many of you think that leadership is that it's important for someone to demonstrate visible support for what it is that you're doing? Yeah. It's nice to hear good job or a pat on the back and say, look, you're heading in the right direction. Isn't that a lot better than someone saying to you, you can't do this, why are you doing this, you're doing this wrong? If they're trying to help you, why would they be using that type of terminology, right? They should be using something that's more supportive to help you. So the environment matters. So we've got to understand our environment, because each environment has its own personality, when we were talking about culture a little while ago. We also have to understand that individuals are dynamic. Individuals change over time. How many of you have been friends with someone for a long time? 5, 10, 15 years. Is that individual, or maybe a little bit longer in some cases, as I look over there. But is that individual the same as they were when you first met them?
No.
No. Are you the same? No. So over time, you change. So we have to understand that individuals are dynamic, organizations are dynamic, and we need to be able to manage through that. Also, successes in one environment don't translate into another. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with folks that have come from another organization into a company that I was working in and said, this worked well over there. And then it didn't work well over here. Well, you can't say what worked well over there is going to work over here necessarily, because the culture is different, the processes are different, the products and services are different. So you might have something that works well in another environment, but you also need to customize what might have been working well over there to adjust it to the environment that you're in. And then the one thing that I always like to remember is that once you think you have all the answers, once you think you understand it, it's going to change. So one thing that we have to be accustomed and ready for is change, because change is going to happen. You're going to change, you're going to evolve over the rest of your life. So leadership understands these challenges, and leaders make adjustments. So another question for you. What words do you use to describe your personal and business relationship types? So what words do you use to describe the folks that you're in relationships with, whether from a personal level or from a business?
Interactive.
Interactive, okay. Caring. Anyone else? Yeah.
Business relationships are professional.
Yeah, they can be professional. So we're going to talk a little bit about relationship types. So we can have different types of questionable relationships. So we can have someone who's an appendage, who just hangs on to you because they're sucking the life out of you, right? But they just hang on because they figure that you're going, they're just hanging on, and sometimes they're dragging you down or holding you back, right? We can have a conditional friend. So someone who's only friends with you at certain times, right? If the conditions are right. You can have a counterfeit friends, and hopefully you don't have too many of these, right? But some of us, we have counterfeit. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't learn who they are until it's too late. Because my mom used to always say to me as I was a kid, you know, you're always talking about your friends, your friends, your friends, your friends, or my friend, my friend, my friend, my friend. And my mom always used to say to me, wait, just wait until you need them. And then you're going to find out who your real friends are. And actually, in the crowd right now, I have a couple of my real friends because they're here to support me. And during my tough times, they've supported me. Those are my true friends. But the other thing, and you know, I'll continue down the list and I'll come back to this. Evaluative. How many of you have a friend that evaluates everything you're doing? They have something to say about everything. Every time you open your mouth, you say, I'm going to go do this. Well, why would you go do that? You already got all this other stuff. Or, why would you waste your time doing that? You're not going to be successful. Or, maybe that isn't worth your time. How many of you have experienced that? And sometimes it comes from family too, right? Sometimes they're our worst critics. Fair weather friends. You have your friends that are there in good times. They're like, hey, everything's good. I'm there with you. Oh, everything's bad. See you later. So we have fair weather friends. We also have leeches that just take everything. So you have an appendage that, you know, someone that just holds on because, you know, they think that they've got a good food source, they're going to get a little bit of something out of it. But you have a leech that just drains everything. How many of you have ever had a friend that just drains all your energy? You're like, I don't even know why we're talking, you know, because every time we talk, it's just like, oh my God, I'm just drained. And then you have the occasional friend that just pops in from time to time. And that can be good or bad. Because I have had some really, really good friends that I don't speak to on a regular basis, but occasionally the phone rings. Hey, ring. Who's this? Hey, Bob, man, I haven't spoken to you in a while. And then we start talking, and the next thing you know, I can't believe we've been on the phone for 3 hours. And that's okay, because folks get busy with their lives. And those are good friends to be able to have. But then you have those occasional friends that pop in and out for various reasons that might be included in this list. We have negative friends. Those that are just Debbie Downers, negative all the time, never have anything positive to say. And if you have those types of folks in your life, you want to get them out. Non-committal. How many of you have had friends who like trying to get a commitment? It's like pulling teeth. They can never make a decision. It's like, oh, you want to go to the movies tonight? Yeah, I want to go to movies. What do you want to see? Well, I don't know. What's playing? Or I want to go to this one. Or you have someone that waffles on you all the time. So they'll make a decision, and they'll say something, and then all of a sudden they'll flip. And you're like, okay. Situational friends. So I've seen this before, where I've been at a networking event. Someone that we don't necessarily have a close relationship. I don't want to use any bad words. But we don't have a close relationship. But all of a sudden, I'm over here and I'm having a conversation. And I'm talking to the senior vice president within our organization, and then all of a sudden this person that isn't friendly to me, guess what they're doing? Hey Stacy, how you doing? Right? Because there's something that could personally benefit them. Then we have our friends that are relationships types that are spiteful. Folks that no matter what you're doing, they're spiteful of it. Why are you going to school? Why are you doing this? So we have our friends that are spiteful. But then, or our relationship types, I don't really want to call them friends. And then we have the folks that are toxic, that are just bad news all day long, and there's nothing positive that comes out of the relationship. So these are some of our questionable relationship types. So let's look, oops, let's go this way. All right, so now we're going to talk about positive relationship types. And I describe basically 4 categories of positive relationship types. Why might you want to have a cheerleader? Supporter. You want someone to say, you're going to get your degree, go, 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 right? Yeah. You want somebody that's going to be that supporter for you. What about a good time Charlie? Someone that you can just let your hair down completely, take the jacket off and go out and have a good time, and you know that they're not going to tell anybody else about it. And you know some of you have done that with your friends and you don't want anybody else to know. You know you've done it. All right, and then you want to have a kindred spirit, right? So a kindred spirit is someone that's just alike. I mean, you met, and from the first day you met, you're like 2 peas in a pod. Have you ever met someone that's like that for you? If you haven't, it's an incredible experience when it does. And you also want somebody who's a strategist, someone that's going to help you to plan the things that you're doing, and it's going to help you to achieve, and vice versa. And then your strategists also are folks that are going to tell you the things that you don't necessarily want to hear. Do you have somebody in your life that'll tell you the truth, the hard truth, whether you want to hear it or not? If you don't, go get somebody. And so I do a lot of crazy different business ideas. You know, I fail at this one, go try this one. I do this, and then I go do this, right? And I'll talk to some of my friends. I'll call and say, look, this is what I'm doing. I do not want my friends to say, yep, that's a great idea every time I tell them what, one of my ideas. I want them to say, no, that's crap. And this is why it's crap. And that's okay. Don't tell me it's crap and then just hang up the phone. Tell me it's crap. But your crap is crap, but here's how you can make it better, right? Because that's what I want, that strategist, that relationship. All right, so another thing that we want to think about as we're developing ourselves as leaders is to be able to have several different types of mentors. So a lot of times you might hear someone say to you, you need to get a mentor. And a lot of times folks describe mentors as a specific type of individual. So what I'll tell you is you need to have 4 different types of mentors. So the first mentor is somebody that's committed to your development. They don't have to be in your field or your specialty, but it's just somebody who is a support system for you that can guide you through life. So one of the things that I think is very important is when I'm teaching students is that I don't just teach business, I teach life and business. Because you need to have, there's a relationship between the 2 of them. You understand life, you understand business, you understand business, you understand life a little bit better. So you have to have an integration strategy. We have to teach individuals to think beyond what's in the text, but bring that to the real world as well. So we want to be able to have an integration strategy. You want to have someone in your field. So whether you're in IT, marketing, or in accounting, you want to have somebody who's in your field. You also want to have somebody within your specialty. So having someone within your field is great, but you want to have someone, so having someone within your specialty, they have a great breadth of knowledge. So I want to have someone within my specific specialty that has specific knowledge that can help me to be better and navigate the things that I'm going to do on a day-to-day basis. So we want to have someone within our specialty. So if you're in IT, you can have someone in network security. If you're in marketing, you can have somebody in promotions, okay? And then you want to have someone outside of your organization. And that one might seem a little foreign to some of you being up there. Why might you want to have a mentor that's outside of your organization? Why might that be important, sir? Unbiased and different perspective, right? Because sometimes folks that are within your environment or within your immediate organization, they can have perspectives that are similar to yours, and they may or may not be able to tell you things differently. All right, so I have another question for you. What is the significance of the expression crabs in a barrel? Well, and even before you answer, how many of you have ever heard about crabs in a barrel? Okay, a few of you. So what's the significance of the expression? Those of you that don't know, what might you guess? Or even if you do know. Yes, ma'am.
Is it like when one crab tries to escape, the other one is straight down?
Exactly. Have you ever heard of that in a certain community? Yeah? Where? You've heard about it in the black community, right? So understanding crabs in a barrel. So it's an adage that if there's a bunch of crabs in a barrel and one of them tries to get out, then what will happen is the others will reach up and try to bring it back down. Because if I can't get out of here, you can. Have any of you ever experienced that? Right. How many of you have ever heard something like this? You talk white. Why are you going to school? You know? I mean, so there's different things that folks will say to try to discourage the things that you're trying to do. And what we have to learn to do is to be able to shut all of that down. Because you have to know who you are. And leadership, where does it start again? With you. Okay? So it's a dangerous mentality that if I can't make it, you shouldn't make it either. All right, so now let's look at the workplace a little bit. So what are some challenges that we experience in the workplace as minorities? So there can be lack of minority representation in the workplace. How many of you work in an office or have gone to a corporate office and seen a lack of diversity? Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. So that's one of the things that I always like to look at from a senior level when I'm deciding to work with an organization. Why might that be important? Anybody? Because if I go to their website, I can see what their leadership team looks like. How many of you have ever gone to look at a leadership team and saw that they were all white? Or all white and one female? Or all white and then one minority? And how many of you have ever looked at a leadership chain and saw that there's a minority in a certain position? Because I typically see, when I see a management team that has all white team, I find a minority in certain positions. It happens. And the positions that I normally see, anybody want to guess? Diversity officer. Where else? Customer service. I'm sorry? Well, not, secretary, you can see that. But you typically see it in HR, in training, customer service, and in the diversity office. And so I'm just going to step aside from this for just a moment. How many of you have ever worked in a corporate office and you see a team that's all white? Right? We see that a lot. So I'll tell you an actual scenario or a situation that happened. I was in a meeting at a Fortune 500 company in an IT network security engineering organization. And I was supposed to have a meeting because I'm a project manager, project leader by trade. Unfortunately, there was a fire drill that was going on, so a lot of folks couldn't attend the meeting. So a few of us showed up for the meeting, and then we were in there and we decided we were going to talk about a few things. And then when we decided to leave, we were like, there's a bunch of black guys sitting in this conference room. We probably shouldn't all leave at the same time. But, I tell that story because we shouldn't even be thinking that way. How many times have you seen an all-minority team? Not too often. You don't see it. So we have to start asking some of these questions. Different performance standards and expectations. Sometimes minorities are held to different standards. Whether you're a woman, whether you're black, whether you're Asian, whether you're Hispanic, sometimes we're held to different standards. And then we experience discrimination, and I don't need to elaborate on that particular one. But I'm going to ask you a question. Why might I include workplace bullying on the list? It happens. But why might it be something that we need to be concerned about as minorities?
So it doesn't repeat itself.
So it doesn't repeat itself? Yeah, that's important.
Therefore, it doesn't continue the large scheme of the community it serves, or they serve.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. What else?
It affects your performance.
We're accused.
It affects your performance.
It affects your performance. Yeah, and recently I wrote an article that's entitled, Is Workplace Bullying the New Discrimination? Because in terms of discriminatory protection, you're only protected legally if you're part of a protected class based on race, sex, religion. But things outside of that, you're not protected unless the organization has additional policies that they want to adhere to. So there was an actual situation in the North where a gentleman had a tie that he wore to work to support his team. But at the dealership, they had a different team, specifically the manager. And the manager said to him, take off your tie. And he said no. He was told to take off his tie again. He said no. And then it happened several times, and he continued to refuse, and they fired him. Is that legal? No? Yeah, it's legal. Huh? Technically? Well, he could get written up for insubordination, but we shouldn't have to worry about those type of things in the workplace. So, I'm sorry? Yeah, and we can talk about that quickly. Virginia is a right-to-work state. How many of you know what a right-to-work state is? Okay, so in a right-to-work state, anybody can be fired at any time for any reason with or without cause. Virginia is a right-to-work state. Anybody can be fired at any time for any reason with or without cause.
How does that go about? Like, what is that? Like, how does that? Like, I'm trying to figure out what is in the discussions, whatever governing body that makes those rules. Like, how do they come to that conclusion? Like, feel good about their decision?
We're a commonwealth.
Well, I mean, a lot of things happen. However, a lot of organizations have policies and procedures that they'll follow before you're terminated. But if somebody within that organization wanted to terminate you and said, come in today and say, you know what, you're wearing that outfit, I don't like it, you have to go, they can terminate you legally as long as it's not against anything that's a protected class. So you have to be aware of that, but most organizations won't do that. They'll follow their policies and procedures. But you still need to be aware of things that are possible.
So does that mean that every organization, like if you're in a state like that, not every place is EOE protected, equal opportunity protected?
Well, every state is protected under the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So you're protected, but there's varying laws depending on what state you're in. Federal laws always apply, but the state-specific laws can be different. So it's just something you want to consider. All right. So actually, before I move on, let me just talk about workplace bullying for just a moment. How many of you are familiar with bullying? How many of you thought that bullying ended once you left high school? Yeah. Right? But bullying can extend into the workplace. And I don't want to really get into workplace bullying. Obviously, more about it, you can go to my website because I do write about it extensively. But what I will tell you about workplace bullying is that bullies will use harassment, intimidation, or threats to get what they want, and then they'll use their power, influence, and control to achieve their objectives. So it's just something that you should be mindful of. All right, so when we're looking at an organization's cultural diversity, what we want to do is we want to examine the organization as a whole. So we want to be able to look at the representation of minorities in the executive level. Because one of the things I always find interesting is I work for an organization and I was required to go to diversity training. And in the diversity training, and I'm sorry, sometimes I'm a rebel with or without a cause, okay? But in the diversity training, I said, we're being required to be here because this organization and this company is supposedly committed to diversity. Why isn't the executive level diverse? And then, of course, it was a parking lot question because they didn't want to answer it. They didn't have an answer for it because the entire executive team was all white. So when there is a disconnect between what executives are saying we're going to do and what they're actually doing, then those lead to challenges within the organization. We also want to look at the quantity of minorities in the workplace, and then also the placement. And the placement relative to what we were talking about earlier, right? Where a lot of times we see blacks in leadership positions. Because what sometimes happens is, within organizations, you have the entry level, you have the manager level, and you probably will see a lot of diversity down here. Then you start to get up to the senior manager level, the director level, it starts to thin out pretty quickly. And then you get up to the upper echelon, and then it's really not diverse at all. So those are things that we have to be mindful about and look to change within organizations. We also want to, I'm going to skip down, but research the availability of developmental and mentoring opportunities for minorities. Because sometimes there might be developmental opportunities that exist, but it may be a little bit more difficult for minorities to get it. I'm not saying that it's not impossible, but you also have to be responsible for your own career, because where does leadership start? With you, right? So let's discover your path. So we need to understand that leaders don't seek to fail, but they're not afraid of it. Do not be afraid to fail. I have failed so many times in my life, and I have learned so much. I've learned more from my failures than I've learned from any of my successes. Because when we succeed, oh my gosh, it was great. What do you go back and look at?
Nothing.
Well, you should.
Well, you-
But a lot of times we don't.
You know.
Right? But when we fail, sometimes we're more motivated to go back and take a closer look. We need to be able to take chances and then know when to take calculated risk. How many of you are familiar with calculated risk? Yeah, because taking risk is good, but we need to be able to take calculated risk. So we take risk only when we've thought through what we're doing to determine what the potential impact is if things don't go well, and then we can work to mitigate those risks. Aren't afraid of others' abilities, intelligence, or accomplishments. That's a really significant one. Because I know some managers will not hire anyone who's more intelligent than they are because they perceive it as a threat. I will tell you this. I want the smartest person that can work for me to work for me. Do you know why? It makes my job so much easier, and I'm not threatened because my job as a leader is to develop the people that come within my organization, and then eventually they're going to leave, and I'm going to be a proud parent, right? Because I helped them on their way. Their success is not taking anything from me. There's enough success out here for everybody, and we don't need to hold anyone back, and I've seen that happen within organizations. Don't make excuses. We've talked about that before. But leaders drive solutions. We make things happen. And then we also work to create futures for others. And I've already discussed that. So let's remember, leadership begins with you. And along with your ability to control, drive, and push yourself. Because leadership starts with you and our ability to push ourselves. So let's start to change the paradigm a little bit. So it starts with loving yourself. Do you love yourself? I do. It's taken me a while to get there, but I do. You gotta love yourself. If you're not looking in the mirror and loving the person that you're seeing, you gotta make some changes. Because if you don't love yourself, it makes it very difficult to have a good day every day. Celebrate your and others' uniqueness. Uniqueness is great. Diversity is great. It would be very, very boring if everybody in this world was the same. We get better because of our diversity and not in spite of it. We want to be aware that minority groups exist and we need to engage and work with each other. Some groups don't do it as much as we should. But start reaching out to other folks and work with them. And not at the exclusion of majority groups, because some groups, they'll get within their little cluster, because we like to be around folks that look like us. But I just say, challenge yourself to find a bunch of friends that represent the rainbow, that are totally different than who you are. Because you can have friends that are different than who you are, and they can help to make you better, and give you a perspective that you never even considered. Work with others to achieve greater goals and measurable objectives. We all need to work together to achieve greater goals, because we're all in this together. And then we want to celebrate everyone's accomplishments. If everybody does well, we all win. So things to consider. So your contributions, positive and negative, impact others. Just understand that. I mean, that's the reality. And we want to choose wisely the way that our energy is used. So one of the things that I like to say is, I like to make sure that I'm ready to tee off. And what I mean by that is I like to use my time, energy, and effort on fulfilling fantasies. And another word for fantasies? Dreams. Okay? Don't settle for less than you're capable of achieving. There's so much more that you're capable of achieving than you think that you are. And when you push those limits, you will be amazed at the things that you'll be able to accomplish, not only for yourself, but also for others. And then, understand this. Nobody does anything alone. Nobody. So many times I hear individuals say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Understand this. You did not do anything alone. From the day you were born until the day you die, when someone lowers you into the ground, somebody will always help. Someone helped put these tables together, the food you're about to eat. I know I'm between you and your meal, so we're going to get there shortly. But someone has always helped you to do something. So understand that you have done nothing alone. So let's start the work now. So I need a group activity here, because we're going to start that paradigm shift. So I want everybody to repeat after me, if you will. So, I see you.
I see you.
I see you. Then look around and see the people that are in the room, right? I see you. All right, the next one. I believe in me and you. I believe in me and you. I support my efforts and yours.
I support my efforts and yours.
I wish the best for you and me.
I wish the best for you and
And good luck to all of us.
good luck to all of us.
All right, let's give us some applause. Great job. All right, so as I start to wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with a few parting thoughts. So parting thought number one. At times, individuals need to step away, step back, or step up. You have to step away if you gave it your all or your best, and you don't have more to give. Step back to regroup, to try it again later. Or step up to make a positive difference for yourself and others. Parting thought number two. Do it for you. Do it for you, even though others may question it. Do it for you while others don't understand it. Do it for you while others may challenge it. Do it for you, even if you don't completely believe it's possible. Do it for you, especially if your efforts will also help others. And do it for you because positive change starts with you. Because you are all leaders. It starts with you. Parting thought number three, your roadmap to success. Dream of possibilities, desire to do more, determination fueled by belief, drive to get through the tough times, and there will be tough times, decisiveness to make decisions, and dedication to achieve the dream. And I want to go back to drive to get through the tough times for just a moment, because one of my good friends from high school, who was a CEO of a local company, said to me years ago when I told him I wanted to start my first business, he said to me, don't do anything for money, do it for passion. Because passion will get you through the tough times. Because if you're doing it for money, it'll be very quickly to walk away. Because I have a nonprofit saving our communities at risk through educational services called Socrates. It's been very difficult to do what I want to do because I'm doing something that's shifting the paradigm. And if I wanted to just walk away, it would have been easy for me to walk away a long time ago. But I know there's so much need, and I know that I'm changing the way we do things. So it's going to take a little bit longer. So my passion has fueled my ability to continue to move forward. Parting thought number four. Pursue unrestricted, sustained happiness. Push. Because remember earlier we said it's important for us to be able to push. Push yourself to complete a task. Push yourself beyond your past. Push yourself to explore many doors. Push yourself to achieve even more. Push yourself to get a different view. Push yourself to become your best you. So, parting thought number five, understand that your candle is fueled from within. So, you don't want to let anyone block or reduce the fuel that might impact its brightness. So anybody who's in your environment that's holding you back, they're preventing you from getting what you need to get them out of your environment. Over the last couple of years, as I've been redefining and rebuilding myself, what I've done is I started to divorce my friends, or at least my old friends. How many of you have ever divorced a friend? And it's one of the best things to do, because I said to one of my buddies that we had been together about 10 years in friendship, and I said to him, I said, one day I was just done, because he had some of that negativity and lack of support. And I said, it's been fun, it's been great. I've enjoyed all the times that we've had together, but unfortunately at this point in our lives, we're heading in different directions. And I wish the best for you, but we can no longer be friends. Because it's about me. And then, in closing, believe it's possible, enjoy your journey, and be your best. Thank you.
can't hear you in the back. We cannot hear you. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I can see you guys kind of clustered up to your best friends. We like to keep it family-like, so we all family here. So feel free to integrate and get to know new people. Feel free to integrate and meet new people. Network, get some new names and information. Have fun with it, all right? All right, we'll be serving shortly. Any questions you have for Mr. Young lady?
Don't be shy. If you have any questions, you can ask. While we're waiting for the food to get set up, wow, I didn't have this on, man. I didn't need it. But
My bad, my computer was on.
oh, see?
Go ahead, talk.
Well, I don't want to now. That's like, wow. I've been yelling the whole time. No, but if anybody has any questions, I mean, whether you have questions about overcoming my challenges, because a little bit more about my story. I told you I failed 6 out of 7 classes in my 10th grade year of high school. I actually graduated in the bottom 8% of my class. I went to 2 colleges, Strayer, and I actually went to Nova about, I won't tell you how long ago, it was a long time ago. I don't want to date myself. But I actually left Nova because I had 2 semesters that I had a 0.0 average. And then I ended up at the American University because I started working at a company that folks were going to graduate school. And then when they decided that they were going to American University, I said, well, if they're going to school, I'm going to go have a conversation with them. So, if any of you know anything about American University, American is a very prestigious school in the local area. And it's very difficult to get in. So, because I was determined to get in, I couldn't get in the front door, and I went in the back door. So I went and had a conversation, found out how I could take some classes non-degree, and then prove that I could do the work, and then I eventually made it into American University. And one of the proudest moments that I've had recently is last week, I was invited back as an alumni at a networking event last Thursday, and for the first time to come back there, wow, it was actually emotional, to go back there and be asked to come speak after I could barely even get in the front door. And then to be here just a few days later and speaking with all of you after I walked away from here because I had basically flunked out. So don't let anybody ever tell you that you can't do anything. Even if you're failing, you're struggling right now, if you have a desire to do something, there is always somebody out there that is willing to help you. The question is, who is it going to be? And one of the things I always like to use is, because I write a lot of inspirational quotes. You can follow my inspirational quotes on Facebook. Go to my website at slyoung.com. But one of the quotes that I have loosely paraphrased, I'll actually give you 2 real quick. One of them is, you change who you are by first determining who or what you want to be. Because if you don't know who or what you want to be, where are you running towards? And then the second one is, I use the word, I've redefined the word no. No doesn't mean no to me, because obviously, if you're telling me no and I want to get something, you're obviously the wrong person. I need to find somebody else who I need to speak to. So what I've redefined no to is new orientation. Because instead of you telling me, okay, it ain't you, now I'm going to go to you. And okay, it ain't you, I'm going to go here. Because who are you to tell me no about what it is that I want to achieve if I want to do something positive? Yes, ma'am.
You said from high school, and I think part of when you were in college. Or
Yeah.
in Illinois.
Yeah.
You weren't that stellar student.
Yeah.
What was the kick in the butt that got you to being crazy?
So I'm going to answer this question, but I'll also tell you I have a lot of videos and other stuff on my website that you can go back and read. But the first thing was, it was a choice. I was standing in front of a McDonald's, and I had never worked at a McDonald's, but I was standing in front of it, and I said, I don't want to work at McDonald's the rest of my life. And it was just that choice, and that was always in the back of my mind. The other thing that I'll share with you also is because some folks suffer from depression or have committed suicide or have attempted suicide. Well, I also will tell you, last year on 3/11/14, I almost committed suicide. I was one phone call away from committing suicide. And I've turned it around in the last year. And so, it takes time because I had all these things that were pinned up inside of me that I never dealt with. And by sharing my story, And being vulnerable, I've become a lot more stronger, and I've released those things that I was most concerned about, because those things that I was holding inside were eating me apart. And then after Robin Williams committed suicide, someone wrote on Facebook, how could someone just throw away their life like that? And that was the beginning of the moment where I said I need to say something, because we're always judging. And we need to stop judging and worry about whatever other folks are thinking about us. So that was the moment that started the change. And so from that moment, so March 11th of last year, when I almost committed suicide, and what I like to define it now is my awakening, because I've changed. I'm not that individual that I was a year ago. I have now become a blogger in the Huffington Post, and I've written over 40 articles. I've been on numerous shows being interviewed. I've written the book about my journey. I'm about to start my own radio show, and there's a lot of things. So just because you're having a moment, and what my brother said to me, and because I called my brother because I take care of my mom, and I just wanted to make sure that my mom was okay. And that was the final phone call I was going to make. And my brother reminded me, he said, this is just a moment. You're only going through a moment. So remember, when you're having those difficult moments, it's just a moment, and it does get better. And reach out to someone before it's too late. Because for me, it was almost too late. And I would have missed the opportunity to help all the folks that I have over the last couple of years, including being here with you right now. So never give up on yourself, and there's always somebody out there that'll help.